shouldn't perform, such work, but does not act, even that is, here, Krishna says that inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. That the Lord advises Arjuna not to be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the results. So, yeah, that's the main point, that one has to perform their prescribed duty, but not be attached to the result. In the next verse, it says, be steadfast in yoga, or Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. This is actually very powerful because sure.
Um, in regards to this verse, Krishna, later on, Krishna also says, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam saranam braja. So abandon all varieties of religion. So that includes the prescribed duties as well, right?
Abandon all varieties of religion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so on one hand, he is asking us to abandon all varieties of religion, and on the other, he is asking us to still do the prescribed duties.
Well, when he's mentioning abandon all varieties of religion, it's in the sense of any religion that is meant for, or that is motivated through material means. In that sense, like, if religion is for like a material status or some sort of materialistic mindset, then yeah, you must avoid certain such religion. But if it's allowing you to grow and develop spiritually, then by all means you should, practice. I mean, even within the Krishna consciousness movement, we have prescribed duties, that we perform. And by performing these duties, it's all, how to say, it's all leading to our surrender to Krishna, you know. So we should differentiate between what's the motive of such religion. Is it to gain some material status, or money, whatever, or is it to actually gain love of God? So in that sense, you should if that answers your question. Okay. Yeah, so like, you know prescribed duties, you know because conditional, the not the constitutional position of the living entity is that he has a loving relationship with Krishna. So naturally, we have to perform duties, but that duty should be in reviving that loving relationship with Krishna. If the duty is um, diverting from that understanding, then it should be worked on to avoid. You know. Okay. So the translation to the second verse was, "Be steadfast in yoga, or Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga." So this is also very important because, as I mentioned before, we're taught to, be attached to the results of our actions, um, when we're, how to when we're striving for something, going to like a career, what's not, you're always gonna be expecting good grades, that's like, expecting a result. You want a good career, good money, etc. So um perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. And you know, Krishna says abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. So yoga means to be connected to Krishna. And in order to be connected to Krishna, we have to give up this. Being attached to success or failure actually creates anxiety. If we think about it, when we think about it, that everyone who's competing in today's world, they're in anxiety, because they might win one, and then they're gonna lose one. So it's always a constant, anxiety of like, because we can't control everything, to an extent we may have some control over something, but ultimately we're not the controllers. Krishna is the controller. That verse from that he says, he's the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of all causes, so he's in control of everything. Therefore, we're not in control. We don't have the capacity or the potency to control anything. Maybe something it's limited to the control that we may have. So, being that we're not controllers, we shouldn't be attached to trying to control a situation. Why? Because it creates anxiety. When we try to control, for example, you go to school, and if you try to control that, you have to get, good grades, and you take the test and you have to get, 100, for example, if you're going into, if you take your test and, you might not get 100 the first time. It might take some time in order to take, you have to, study and what's not before you can get 100. Maybe you get the 100 the first time, but the point is that you're not in control. Everything is being sanctioned through the Lord. So with that being said, when we're attached to success or failure, this creates anxiety. And in the materialistic world where everybody is, trying to control certain situations, and because of their anxiety, leads them to depression and not, so many, stressful situations are going on in the world. People have to take medications for depression and anxiety and stuff. What even drugs. People get addicted to certain habits, bad habits. All because of anxiety. You know, Someone's in anxiety, then they, natural instinct of someone who's in anxiety, they look for happiness. So they might look for happiness in other means of sense gratification. Only a devotee knows to get happiness through Krishna consciousness. You know, that's why, as devotees within the Sankirtan movement, we're meant to preach, the glories of Krishna to the forgotten souls in the material world to regain their loving relationship with Krishna, which will give them true happiness, true bliss. So yeah, everyone in this in the material world, they're, you know, straining after these anxieties and stress and depression and looking for certain, so-called happiness with sense gratification, which is, not going to lead to happiness. I think if I remember correctly, it's mentioned that um, it's sweet at first and bitter later. Yeah. What seems nectar in the beginning is bitter, uh, poison later. Yes, thank you. And what seems to be poison in the beginning is nectar later. So, this is the mindset of a materialistic person, is that they they're trying to enjoy. There's so much anxiety, so they want quick, pleasures, quick happiness. So, they pick up bad habits, drugs, certain foods, and as devotees, yeah, but fast foods, yes, there you go. Exactly, coffee in the morning, because it gives some sort of, indication of, oh, I'm happy by doing these things. But like I said, poison, no, nectar in the beginning, but poison at the end. It leads to frustration once again. Yes, Prabhu. Oh. Hmm.
The similarly, black pepper is hot in the beginning, and its effect is still hot in the stomach as well.
Wow,
So that was the example he was giving. So
nice. Yeah. So yeah, in the purport, we could read from the purport, it says Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga. And what is that yoga? Yoga means to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme by controlling the ever disturbing senses. And who is the Supreme? The Supreme is the Lord. And because he himself is telling Arjuna to fight, Arjuna has nothing to do with the results of the fight. Gain or victory are Krishna's concerns. So this is an amazing point, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, that you know um, gain or victory, are Krishna's concern. Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. You know, Arjuna is born as a Kshatriya, so his prescribed duty is to fight in the war. That is what he was trained for. You know, and Krishna tells Arjuna that you know, um, sorry, I forgot the point I was trying to make. Gain or victory that are Krishna's concern. Arjuna simply advised to act according. Yes, so Krishna would show later on in the Bhagavad Gita his universal form, where he'll see, Arjuna will see many of, the the opponents that he's facing will be eaten, by Krishna's mouth, and it is showing that they're already going to be defeated, and did you want to say them? Yeah, yes. Many of the teats were trapped, and uh, the heads were trapped in the teeth of the universal form. Nice. Yeah, and with yeah, so simply Arjuna is to act as an instrument in Krishna's hand by performing his prescribed duties, and actually that's the constitutional position of us all living entities, is that we're all dependent on Krishna, you know, and we're all dependent to be the instrument of Krishna, to be the instrument of Krishna's representative, the spiritual master. That is our duty um, is to gain that understanding, that realization, is to become an instrument in the Lord's hand, and just by doing that, the Lord is there to guide, and protect the devotee. And exactly what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here, that Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. The following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga, and this is practice in the process called Krishna consciousness. You know, and it's amazing that as a Guru Parampara, following the teachings, coming in a bona fide line, we come to understand that, by following the orders of the spiritual master, who's following the orders of his spiritual master all the way back to Krishna, allows us to act accordingly into our Krishna consciousness. And Krishna says is called real yoga, So this is real yoga when one is acting in this understanding, So let's see. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and as such, he is participating in the Varnashrama Dharma institution. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that the Varnashrama Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as in the rule in the material world, but one should satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. Indirectly, Arjuna was advised to act as Krishna told him. Yes. Okay, next text. O Dhananjaya, rid yourself of all fruitive activities by devotional service and fully surrender to that consciousness. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So here Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, or that Krishna, it's mentioning to Arjuna that, rid yourself of all fruitive activities by acting in devotional service. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that talks Bhaktira Dokshikar Ahaitu Kyapit. So Yatma Suprasiditi, something like that. I can't remember. But Savai from Sampado Dharma. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So so basically, I'm gonna have to look it up because it's uninterrupted and unmotivated devotional service is completely satisfying to the self. Right? I may have butchered that, but but so this, just by performing devotional service, that's where our true satisfaction, that's where true bliss comes, and here, activities by devotional service and surrender fully to that consciousness. When one is acting in pure devotional service, they're completely surrendered to Krishna. They understand Krishna to be the enjoyer. They understand Krishna to be the controller, and they understand Krishna to be, as Krishna says, I will do. That is their mentality. As a spiritual master representative of Krishna says, that's what I will do. So with this mindset, with one acts in that way, they're not considered misers, as mentioned in this translation, that those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So if one acts in according to Krishna and the spiritual master and the bona fide Guru Parampara, then they're not considered misers. They're acting accordingly, to Krishna. So here, Krishna is giving reasons to Arjuna why, act according to what he's saying, So these are very important points. And in the purport, one who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord gives up all engagements saving work in Krishna consciousness. As already explained, Buddhi Yoga means transcendental loving service to the Lord. Such devotional service is the right course of action for the living entity. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruits of their own work just to be further entangled in material bondage. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. One should therefore never desire to be the cause of work. Everything should be done in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of Krishna. Misers do not know how to utilize the assets or riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Like the misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. And with these last few sentences makes me think of how valuable this human form of life is, and being in Kali Yuga, our age is span is less, shortened exactly. That as we're aging, as we're growing older, it's important to understand, the actions we're performing, and the understanding of our actions and the motive, or the end goal of why we're performing such actions, that you know as one is performing actions in Krishna consciousness, you know as he gets older, and still performing action in Krishna consciousness, he has he'll makes sorry and that will make one's life successful. So one's life becomes very successful when they're engaged in devotional service to Krishna. um yeah, so in the material world, everyone is not working for Krishna. They're all working for their sense gratification, in relationship to their body. Therefore, by working in this way, they're actually wasting their human form of life and creating a bondage to this material world. The next life, the samsara, they birth and death have to come back. And in the scriptures, it's described that not you're not how to say you're not going to become a human in your next life. It's not guaranteed that you'll be a human. You'll take the human form of life. There's many 8,400,000 species of life, of bodies within this material world, and you're not guaranteed to take the human form of life. But what's important about taking of having this human form of life is that one has the intelligence to understand, higher substances, has the intelligence to understand, spiritual matter, understand, Krishna consciousness. You can teach a dog, or a cat, or, many amazing tricks and what's not. And, people, like that, they get some pleasure out of that, teaching a dog some trick. But what's the use of it, as, you can't teach Krishna consciousness. You can't teach a dog about, religion, about Krishna consciousness. So, it comes to show also that the capacity of the intelligence of, like a dog, is, acquired to his karmic, to the karmic actions from the last life. So therefore, one has to, in order to have, a spiritual body in the spiritual world with Krishna, one has to make this life successful by engaging in devotional service to Krishna, following the instructions of the Guru Parampara and Srila Prabhupada and the Guru, Mon-Fri Guru. So, do you have a question, Prabhu? You could go.
Hare Krishna. So I wanted to understand misers. So misers, they are hoarders, right?
Orders?
They hoard.
Yeah.
Right? Huh? Oh yeah, wealth. Yeah, exactly. But here, Prabhupada says, in translation, those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. And in the purport, he says, misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. So translation and purport seems to be opposite.
This is for text 49, right? Only misers desire to enjoy the fruits. Mm. Yes. Well, what I would say is that according to one's karma, they get certain results. They might last like perform pious activities to the point where they may be financially successful in one sense, but if if they're hoarding it in the sense of not using it, by Krishna's mercy they get that financial funds, but if they don't use it in Krishna service or for Krishna, then that's considered like a thief or a miser. So if that answers. Yeah, please.
Hare Krishna. So, just to add what you just said, Prabhu, that it might also mean because misers, by say some fortune, they got wealth, but now since they don't know how to utilize those assets, therefore, and since they don't know what to do, therefore they're trying to use it for their own sense gratification, and hence they're called misers. Because even though they got it, they're not putting it into the right place for the right use. So in that way, they're trying to enjoy the fruits of their work, and hence they're like short-sighted or cripple-minded. Like that's what they say, right? Kripana and a Brahmana. Kripana always sees which is like on a short-term basis. A Brahmana always has a larger vision put in place. So,
So we can end here if there's any questions or comments. But before we end, we could just read the last text 51 that kind of summarizes it all. That the wise engaged in devotional service take refuge in the Lord and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way, they can attain the state beyond all miseries. So that pretty much sums the what we talked about. So thank you guys for tolerating and listening to me. But sure.